Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're in Masechtas Yevamot daf Kuf Hey. We are going to begin on Kuf Dalad Amud Beis, about 15 lines from the bottom. Sholchulei le'avud Shmuel. Yevamot sharakaka tachalates. Says Rashi, if you have a woman that was a Yevama and she did the chalitza process of spitting in front of Beis Din, tachalates. At that point, only chalitza can be done. Says Rashi, "Dinifselas alehen meyibum." At that point, once that part of the ceremony took place, yibum can no longer take place. She's puzzle to the other brothers. B'chlal tivsolela ma'achin. Again, once she spits, she's now puzzle to the other brothers. Somani, ilay Rabbi Kiva. If you want to tell me this is the shita of Rabbi Kiva Hashta, mitzvah. When it comes to the place of a mitzvah, says Rashi, b'shas chalitza, shirakika mitzvah, at the time of chalitza, when she does the spitting of a mitzvah, that maybe we would think it has the same din of the sacrificial parts, that if it's not there, it's not ma'akev. If there it is, then it's ma'akev. Says Rashi, if let's say when it comes to sacrificial parts, if you have basar mi'achila, meat, as it's brought down in Masechtas Pesachim, if there is nothing there, it's not ma'akev the carbon kagon. Shenitmu or she'avdu. Let's say it either got lost or tameh. Nonetheless, we say that it's not ma'akev the carbon. So v'hachinami name we should say afgadalav masa choshiv ba'ishu. This is not considered to be an action of the man. This is an action of the woman. However, efshar laroik la'akev, since that the spit could be ma'akev. V'kaimer Rabbi Kiva lo ma'akva. However, Rabbi Kiva in our Mishnah, as we saw, we said if let's say you did chalitza and the kriya but not the spitting, so Rabbi Lezer says it's chalitzasas psul. Rabbi Kiva says chalitzasas kshera. So even if you didn't do it at all, so the din is that it's kosher, that it's still good chalitza. So obviously it shows that the spitting is really not an integral part of the avoda. So therefore, if that's the situation, then it's hard to imagine that it's like the shita of Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Akiva doesn't even require b'diavad. If you didn't do the spinning, it's still a good chalitza. So if you don't even need to do it, so then why would the spitting be ma'akev to the point that it'll actually passel the other brothers from doing yibam? Vel or Rabbi Lezer. Rather, maybe it's like the sheet of Rabbi Lezer, as we saw in the Mishnah, that if the person didn't do the spitting, she didn't do the spitting, then it invalidates the chalitza. It needs to be done. So therefore, maybe according to this opinion, Rabbi Lezer holds, therefore, if she did the spitting, that's significant enough that she can no longer do yibum. She actually has to then do chalitza, and that's it. Ve'elo Rabbi Lezer, shnei devarim hamatirin inhu. Shnei devarim hamatirin in ma'alin zeh below zeh. He holds that if you have two different matirin, two different things that make things permissible, in that situation, he says, in malin zeh below zeh, you can't do one without the other. Says Rashi, he says it is an action. So he holds that when it comes to various carbonos, in which there's two things that matter you to be able to eat, let's say the rest of the carbon, so you need both of them. So over here, if he actually requires the spitting, but he also requires the chalitza, so therefore just doing the spitting also according to him shouldn't be enough. Ella Karebi, the Sanya Kivsi Seres, when it comes to the bringing of the kvasim on Shavuos, Ein Mekanshin Halechem El B'Shchita. We said that the bread only becomes sanctified once the actual shchita of the kvasim takes place. It says Rashi, L'yais Kodesh B'Kedushas Haguf, that only at that point does the bread take upon itself the Kedushas Haguf, like a carbon. With pasel b'yoytze, that if you would take it out of its designated area, it will invalidate it, or velina, if it stayed overnight, el b'shchita. It's only when the kvasim are shechted. V'afapi shehein tu'unin tenufa, chayin im halechem, ein tenufasan mekadshan. Even though it's true that there is an element of waving together with the breads, that's not what's going to be mekadosh the bread. El shchitasan, the gomer el nozer, dechsev es ha'ayel yasa zevach shalom Hashem al sal hamatzos. So tal kosav asiyas sal hamatzos bezvicha sa'ayel. So therefore, it's all connected to the shechting. So the only time that the bread becomes sanctified with kedusha seguf is only when the kvasim are shechted. So ketzad shachtan lishma. So let's say you shechted the kvasim lishma, v'zark daman lishma, and you did the zrika too that way. Then certainly kaddish alechem. But let's say kaddish shachat shlo lishman, v'zark lishman, lo kaddish alechem, because since the shchita, which is an integral part of making the bread sanctified, was done shlo lishma, that will not help make the bread holy. Fine. Rashi says lechem kadosh li possible yaitz vein kadosh li yaitz niter bachila shachlo lishman v'zark daman shlo lishman. Let's say the shchita was done lishman, but not the zrika. So in that case, kadosh ve'enu kadosh. Divrei Rabbi. Rabbi says that even though there are two matirin, one without the other still does something. Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Shimon, enu kadosh shishchad lishman v'zark daman lishman. He holds that it's necessary, which again is the problem, that when there's two matirin, that one is needed for the other one. So therefore it must be, it's according to the shita of Rabbi that says that even if there's two matirin, so therefore one does something. So too, when you did the spitting, that does something in order to be able to passel her from being able to do yibum with the brothers. Or maybe Rabbi Kiva Rikika will pasla. Does Rabbi Kiva really say that the Rikika does not passel her to the other brothers? Is that really true? Because again, if the Rikika wasn't done at all, so it's still a good chalitza, but does he actually say if Rikika was done, that's going to passel her from the other brothers of Asanya? Chaltza, let's say she did the chalitza, v'lo, as we continue to kuf hey amid aleph, rakaka, but she did not do the spitting, v'lo kara, chalitza sakshera. Fine. Rakaka v'lo chaltza, let's say she spit without doing the chalitza, v'lo kara, chalitza sabsula. So clearly the chalitza, the actual removal of the shoe, is ma'akev. Kara v'lo rakaka, v'lo chaltza, let's say she read, but she did not do the spitting or the taking off the shoe, ein kan beis mechush. That's nothing. Just reading psukim in itself is not going to accomplish anything. So money. Elam Rebbe Lezer, if you want to say that this whole statement is Rebbe Lezer, so choltza v'loy rakaka, v'loy kara, what do we say? That if you took off the shoe but nothing else, chalitza kshera, so we said that's a chalitza is kosher. But Rebbe Lezer, kachi yasa davar shehu masim akev, that he actually requires even the spitting is ma'akev. So it cannot be like him, because just taking off the shoe without doing the spitting will not accomplish anything. Galabshita Rabbi Kiva. Must be that's like the shita Rabbi Kiva. V'tani rakaka v'loy chaltza v'loy kara chalitza sabsula. We see the spitting itself, the chalitza's puzzle. So man, ilemel alma pshita. If we're talking about that, she's not allowed to marry anyone, of course not. Mihavi chalitza dishtariel alma. Is this considered to be enough of a chalitza? There was no shoe taken off. All she did was do the spitting. Obviously, that's not going to be sufficient in order to be able to allow her to go and marry anyone in the shuk. That certainly would not be enough. Ella, so what is the Brisa talking about? Elav achen. It's coming to say that just doing the spitting is enough, maybe, to say that now it removes her from Yibam from the brothers. So Shema Mina. So we actually see that this is actually a raya, because obviously the spitting is not enough to say that she's free to go to anyone else, but at least it's enough to disconnect her from Yibam. Rabbi Kiva Maishno Rikika Maishno Kriya. Why, when it comes to the spitting, does it have some power but not the reading? So Kriya di Isa ben Badchil ben Basof. So in this ceremony, the Kriya is done at the beginning and the end. It says Rashi, Kodem Chalitza. Before the actual taking off the shoe, she says, Mein Yavmi, Ben Achar Chalitza Kachi Yasa. So there's statements that are said before and after the shoe. So because of that, Lo Mechalfale, no one's going to end up getting confused and think that it was done in a particular order, or that, let's say the shoe was taken or wasn't done. Rakika, the B'dchila, Leisel, V'saif, Isa, Michafale. However, when it comes to the spitting, the basic ceremony is that you take off the shoe and then she does the spitting. So therefore, it's possible if, let's say, a person only saw the spitting, so there could be a mistake. Yosel mishri chalutzel achen, and we may allow chalitza to the brother, says Rashi, of a rekika delesa el basar chalitza. Since the spitting only takes place after the shoe is removed, so michlafa inshi, people get confused. V'yomru hach midirakaka, that spitting vadecholtzela beresha. It must be, since she did the spitting, it must be she first did the taking off of the shoe. It must be, because the spitting takes place after the shoe. V'yafil hachi hadra umisyavemes. And then we see that she's going to go do yibum, v'yasel mishri chalutzel achen. And then we're going to mater chalitza to the brothers. So therefore, it becomes problematic, because the spitting itself, which is an action, people will think, oh, gee, I know that you're supposed to do the spitting after the removal of the shoe, and therefore it must be that she actually did the entire ceremony. That according to this opinion, that it says if a Yevama did the spinning, again, tachlit, she actually must do chalitza. Not that she is, which is similar language. But the chiddush is, she doesn't have to do the spitting part again. Now, like this following story, that someone came before Rabbi, Habi Yosef Rabbi Abba Bar Mamel Kameh, Raka Kameh Kameh. So she did the spitting in front of him. So the tachlites. So Amalei Rabbi chalitz la do chalitza v'shari la tigra. So Amalei Rabbi Abba I b'habi inan meirok. So doesn't she need to spit again? Whereas no harakala, she already did. And since it was done prior, it's not necessary for it to be done again. It says Rashi v'shari tigra. Koimer potter, she'll be free. V'shalchalim bebeistin. So that was sufficient. I v'teruk mambakach. What's the big deal? So, don't spit again. What do you mean? Just do it again. What's the big deal? What's the whole problem? After the chalitza, after the shoe's taken, we'll have her spit a second time. So nafik me chorba. If this would happen, then a potential chorba could happen. What's the problem? Diamrit tihader v'teroik. If we say, okay, go spit a second time, a person will think that the initial rakika means nothing. And what will end up happening is that we're going to end up allowing this situation. If someone would have only have done chalitza, then we would have end up also allowing her to continue to be with the brothers. But the truth is that the chalitza itself, even though it wasn't done, but the spitting, as we mentioned, has enough of mamashus, of substance, that will end up causing that she should now be puzzled to the brothers. And therefore, if in fact we would say that after she did the spitting and then she would actually take off the shoe, required to do it a second time, then people end up saying the first time really had no significance and no meaning. Inon kasidron, doesn't have to be kaseder. It's supposed to be in its proper order. First the taking off the shoe and then afterwards the spitting. The Rabbi says no. Kasidron lo ma'akva. When it comes to the actual seder, that's not something which is ma'akev. It is not an actual requirement. He thought this whole point was just pushing him off, but not actually concrete and real. So nafik, so he went out, dak v'ashkach, and he actually found that this is actually the situation. The sanya. Bein shehiktim chalitza rakika. Bein shehiktim rakika chalitza mashiasa asui. So we see beferish that even if it was done out of order, that's not necessarily an issue. So it's possible that even though a person first did the spitting and then the taking off the shoe, even though that's not the normal routine of the ceremony, nonetheless it's still acceptable. Levi nafik l'kuryosa. So Levi went out to the field, and he asked the following question: Gidemes mahu shetachleitz. What is the din when it comes to a person who is a gidemes, namely a woman who does not have hands? And of course, part of the ceremony is her taking off the shoe, which would require to have hands. So what is she supposed to do? After all, the only way that perhaps she could actually do yibum now or chalitza is actually by removing the shoes with her teeth. So her answer is Yevama Shirakaka, that's one question. Yevama Shirakaka Dam Mahu. What is the din if, let's say, you have a Yevama that she, instead of spitting out saliva, blood comes out instead. So Gemara answers like this: Aval agilucha es haroshim b'chtav emes. So what does this mean? So Rashi says as follows: Mikrahu b'Daniel shahamalach oimer lo agilucha es kol hanigzar b'shemayim, that'll be decreed from heaven. V'roshim b'ksav v'hu emes v'chad deika b'shemayim ksav sheinu emes. What does that mean? There's certain things that are not true. V'chad deika ksav sheinu emes. Lo habibiyad. You didn't understand what that pasuk meant. So because of that, asa shoyel be'midrasha. They asked, what exactly does this pasuk mean? So Amalei said, Niksiv v'cholza biyad doesn't say that the chalitza must be done with her hand. It's possible that it can be done even with her teeth. Umiksiv v'yarka rok, just spit. Aval agudacha haroshim b'chsav emes v'chi yesh b'chsav shenu emes lo kasher kan b'gzardin sheish imo shvua kan b'gzardin shein imo shvua. It's totally if there's a shvua connected to the Gzar Din. What does that mean? Could Rav Shmuel bar Rav Ami? Rav Shmuel bar Rav Ami had this before. Rav Yonas Amanayin Gzar Din Sheishi Mo Shvua Shenu Miskareya. That cannot be ripped up. In other words, what it is. It remains MS. It cannot be changed if it has a shvu attached to it. Shnemer l'chein ishbati l'veis Eli. Regarding the house of Eli, imischaper abin beis Eli bezevach v'mincha. Ad oilam, that they're not able to, because their mistake of Chafni and Pinchas was with karbanos, so they're not able to bring karbanos. Amarabba bezevach of a mincha and mischaper of a mischaper who bedivri Torah. However, they could actually use Torah. They can learn Torah, and that will be a form of kapara. Abaya havi bezevach. Abaya oimer bezevach of a mincha and a mischaper of a mischaper begilus chasadim. They can engage in kind acts. So Rabbi v'Abaya medbeis Eli. Ka'asu. They came from the house of Eli, in which there was a gzardin that they're not going to live a long life. Rabba the asik b'Torah chaya arben shnin. Rabba lived for 40 years because he was engaged in Torah. Abai the asik b'Torah ugemis chasadim. He also was engaged in kind acts. Chaya shtin shnin. He lived 60 years. Tanaban mishpacha achas hayis b'Yerushalayim shahaya meisim keben shmoyne esrei shana. So this family in Yerushalayim that people tragically died at a very young age, 18. Maybe you come from this background. Go and learn Torah, and you'll live. And they lived. Because he gave him this eitzah, so the family was named after him. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Uni. Amar Rav Menayin Gzar Din Shel Tzibur Sheinu Nechtam Ella Enu Nechtam. What do you mean Gzar Din is not signed? Boksiv Ki Im Techabsi Baneser. If you wash even with this fine soap, the Tarbilach Boiris Nichtam Avaynech Lefanai. Are you able to basically cause this to be changed? El Menayin Shefil Nichtam Miskareya. That even if it's signed, it can be ripped up. Shnemer Mika Hashem Elokeinu b'chol kareinu eila. B'ksiv dirshem yimatzo lokasha habiyachid habetzibor. So there's a difference between biyachid and betzibor. The yachid amos. So when does an individual have this power? So Rav Nachman Amar Ravua Eilu Aser Yamim. This is the Aser Mitzvah. Shemin Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim. Shalchol Yabodu Shmuel Yevamot Shirachaka Dam. So let's say you have this woman that instead of spitting out saliva, she spits out blood. Tachlites. The din is that it's still a chalitza. There's still saliva in that blood. You would think that the blood that comes out of the mouth or from the male member should be tamei. Talmud learner zovo tamei. But why? We know that the spit of a zav is tamei. So lokasha kan b'moitzetzes kan b'shaises. It depends if the blood is, you suck out the blood, or if the blood is dripping out. Says Rashi, moitzetzes I efsher b'lo susuchi broik. If it's dripping, then certainly there is saliva that is going to be attached to it. If it's sucked out, so that's something in which is directly connected to the blood, and therefore not necessarily is there any saliva attached to it. Question 13. Rakika okriya b'fnei ha'achin b'loi chalitza im poiselos oisa alehem. So if let's say all you had was rikika, that will passel her to the brothers. However, kriya, as we said, will not passel her to the brothers. That was question 13. Okay, continue the two dots. Cheresh and echlat v'chul. As we continue to Kuf Hey Amud Beis. Rabbi Huda Rav Zu Divrei Meir. The Chacham Amrim in Chalitzas Katan Kolom. That when it comes to a chalitza performed by a boy who is a katan, that has no bearing whatsoever. Okay, says Rashi, because it's quoted previously in Daf Sadi Vav. Also chalitzas ben Tesha can get hagadol. Okay, weiter. Katana shecholza. So he said that if the girl does chalitza, we should wait until she grows up. When she becomes old enough, then she should do chalitza again. That a girl has to be at least a gadola. She cannot be a katana. Only a boy has to be the age of majority. Isha ben gadol ben katana. So man chachamim. Who's this opinion of the chachamim that you can even have a katana? Rabbi Yosi, the Rav Chia, Rav Shimon, Bar Rebbe, Haviyas, they're sitting. Pasachad minai. One of them opened up the and he said the following: Kamaspalil. When a person davens Shmon Esrei, Sar Shiitin Einav Lamata. The person's eyes should go downward. Shenemar V'Hayu Einei V'Libi. Einai v'libi, my eyes and my heart. Sham kol hayamim. V'chad omer einav l'mala. So the question is, where do the eyes go? Do they go downward or they go upward? Shnemer, the pasuk says, Nisa l'vavenu el kapayim. Adahachi yasal Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yosi l'gabayu. Armelhu b'mai askisu. So armelei b'tfil. We're involved in discussing the dinim of davening. Armelhu kach omer Abba, hamispalil sar shiitin edav lamata v'libel lamala. When a person davens, your eyes should go downward, but your heart should be going upwards. Kadeshis kaimu shnei mikros halalu. In order to be able to fulfill these psukim, which is question 14 and TA 28. Adahachi. In the meanwhile, asa Rebbe lamasifta inhu dahavi kalili yasivi buduchtahu. Those people who are thin were sitting in their place. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yosi, Agav Yukre, because they were heavier, having mafaseya va'ozel. They were continuing to go. So Amrule Abdon. So let's just make sure I'm saying this right. Mafsiya va'ozel hoylech la'at. They're going slowly. Abdon Rashi is Talmidei Shel Rebbe Havi. This was the name of one of Rebbe's students. He said as follows: Mihu zeh shemafaseya al Rashi Am Kadosh. Who is this person who is going slow together with the Rashi Am Kadosh? In other words, that everyone is standing so long because they're walking so slowly. Ani Shmuel Rabbi Yosi Shabasi Limatarim Rebbe. This is who I am, and I'm coming to learn Torah from your teacher, Rebbe. Are you really befitting to be able to learn from such a great man, such as my teacher? Was Moshe great to stand in front of Hashem? So if Moshe could do it, so I should do it too. So what, you're telling me you're Moshe? So who is your teacher like God? So Rav Yosef Shakle Rebbe. So Rebbe took lemitarpase. Rashi says ligmoilo al sheshama v'imicha. He was upset that he heard this and he did not protest. To Karmeli Rabcha, and they said your teacher below Rebbe. He didn't say Rebbe yet. Hachi asa Yevamot kamei. So in the meanwhile, in the middle of this whole discussion, Yevamot came up in front of them. The Rebbe Amalei Rebbe Abdon. So Rebbe said to his student, Puk Bodka, go and examine. Says Rashi, Im Havia Shtei Saros, to see if she is a Gedola. Because according to him, it's necessary for her to be Gedola to perform Chalitza. Labasa denafak Amalei Rebbe Shmuel Kach Amar Abba Ish Kosaba Parsha. Isha bin Gedol ben Katana. It shouldn't be necessary for you to have to check to see if she has Shtei Saros. Even a Katana should be able to do Chalitza. So Amalei Ta Lo Tzrichas Kvar Hoira Zakin. Come back because a Zakin already said that this is acceptable. Kimapasa Abdon. So when he came, V'aser Amal Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi Misha Sarach Loi Am Kadosh Yivsa Al Rashi Am Kadosh. Someone who needs an Am Kadosh should be able to go together with Am Kadosh. Mish Ein Sarach Lo Am Kadosh Hech Yivsa Al Rashi Am Kadosh. Fine. So Amalei Rebbe La'abdon Kum B'duchtech. He said you should continue to stay in your location. Tana Ba'isa Shah. It was learned at that time that Nitztarei Abdon, that Abdon, this student, actually developed Saras. V'tovu Shnei Bonov, and two of his children tragically drowned. Ume'enu Shnei Kaloisov, and his two daughters-in-law became widowed. Amar Rav Nachman Yitzchak Barech Rachmana, that blessed Hashem, the Kasvel Abdon Bahai Alma, that he was actually like embarrassed in this world. Rav Ami Midavarav Shel Rebbe Nilmud Katana Chaletzes. From this, we learned that even a katana could do chalitza. However, the question is, that's only be'utais. She has to at least be the age of pu'utais. And so at that age, what Rashi says, Mahi haputus kavar shis kavar sheva. She has to be 6 or 7 years old. Rabba Omer ad shetagia lo'oinas nidarim. She should at least be the age of oinas nidarim. Rashi says shana achas koidim lizman shtei saros, which is typically 11 years old. The hilchasa ad shetevi shtei saros. Actually, the halach after all this is she actually has to be able to show signs of physical maturity. Apparently, because we do make this hekesh to a boy. Cholza b'shnayim. So the Mishnah said that really should you do chalitza in front of a Beis Din 2 or 3, and then the story of Rabbi Kiva and the story of Beis Hasurim, they were in jail, that the chalitza was done even by 1. Chalitza b'shnayim. So Omer Rabbi Yosef Bar Ben Yomi, Omer Rabbi Nachman, in halacha ka'isel hazug. The halacha is not like that zug, rather it's like the Tanakama that required 3. I b'ham Rav Nachman chana zimna. We already heard this before. Diam Rabbi Yosef Bar Ben Yomi, Rav Nachman, the chalitza b'shloisha. We already know it has to be done with 3. Sricha. Dian marbaha hach kamaisa having min hadim el chadchila. Mimol chadchila need to have 3. Avad yavad na mitrei kamash blan. In halacha kaisa hazug, that even b'diavad it's not acceptable. V'yashminan in halacha kaisa hazug el katanakama hamamin b'diavad of l'chadchila liboy chamisha sricha. Maybe we think you actually need 5. Therefore, again, just as long as you have 3, that's sufficient. Masa shel cholza v'chulu. So ben leveina miodana. How do we know, or who knows, that it was actually done if it was done basically in secret? So maybe Huda Shmuel, the Eidim Royinaisai Mibuchutz. The witnesses saw what happened from the outside. And therefore that's how the Eidim could testify, in fact, that it was actually on some level done, even though, again, it was done privately. Iboilu, Masa Shechalzu Ben Leveina Avroi. When it came to the story of the chalitza, it was done, it was outside, well, Masal of Rabbi Kiva, Bebeis Asurin, Odilma Masa Shechalzu Ben Levina Bebeis Asurin. Maybe actually the chalitza was in jail. So Rav Yehuda Amarav Bebeis Asurin Hayamaisa. Actually, they did it in the jail. Bebeis Asurin Bamaisa. And Rabbi Kiva was actually in jail too at the time, and that's the reason why he was able to give this testimony regarding this case. So as we saw, TA28, Tamispal Hechen Sarach Shiu Einav. So we said that a person's eyes should be lamata, and a person's eyes should be lamala. Fine. Question TB29. Madu Yevamot Shirakaka Nifseles Al Achen Rabbi Kiva Shirakaka Enula Ikuva. Why would he hold that it's a problem if you did the whole ceremony? So why is it necessary? Why would you say it's a problem if you only did the spitting? The spitting itself is not ma'akiv. It's still a chalitza. If you did everything else except for the spitting, it's still a good chalitza. So then why would we say if all she did was the chalitza apostle? So the answer is gezerah. Dilma asal meimar. People make a mistake and they'll think midrakaka vade chalza, from the fact that if she did the spitting, and it's a chalitza, v'fil hachem is yavemes, v'asal mishri chalutza la'achin. So people, because of this mistake, that's the reason why, according to the sheet of Rabbi Kiva, even though chalitza alone, not being done it's still a good chalitza. However, together with the, if it was only done, so we say that it will passel her to the brothers. Ad kan.